Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justice, and today I'm continuing to trek along in the Nightmare franchise with Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. In this entry, Alice returns and is pregnant, but finds Freddy Krueger striking through the sleeping mind of her unborn child, hoping to be reborn into the real world. The plot synopsis for this film is way more straightforward than the actual film is. It's kind of hard to process that Freddy's whole plan is trying to possess her child in this entry until towards the end when Alice finally spells it out for you in this exposition dump. But starting it off though, I don't actually hate this film. I found myself enjoying it more than The Dream Master, but it's still not that good of a movie all in all, let alone a good nightmare movie. Many of the problems even that I had with the last film carry on here. I said it ad nauseum in the last video. There's great ideas here, but the script is very clearly unpolished, which tracks because, yet again, 1 year later, this was thrown in theaters after the last film, and filming was extremely rushed with constant rewrites throughout the entire filming process, and oh, I got a buddy again. But there were constant rewrites throughout the entire filming process, and it does heavily show in this film, especially in the very messy final act. What I will say though is I had fun with the kills, and though Freddy is still in his comedy era, it's dialed back here. That was one of my biggest problems with Dream Master, is there was way too many of those stupid forced one-liners throughout the entire movie. Though Freddy has plenty of those here in this film, it feels less glaring to me, but that might just be more of a personal thing all in all. I also enjoy the more gothic energy of the dream sequences in this entry. They're very imaginative, and I would have loved if they would have leaned into it more because there is a lot of really cool nightmare sequences in this film. But the best way I think I can talk about this movie though is going through the characters and their eventual deaths, especially since there are so few. With a franchise low, we only have 3 deaths in this film, but at least all of them are decently fun and memorable. So it goes without saying, but spoilers ahead for this 40, 50-year-old movie now. But in this entry, Dan returns, Alice's love interest from the last film, and I didn't talk about him much in my last review, and I'm not really sure what it is, but I like him more in this entry.
I just want you to come inside. Baby, what's mine is now yours.
Okay, yeah, that was probably entirely why I enjoyed him in this film. He's still the cute, doofy jock, but I enjoyed his return with Alice and was able to buy into their relationship, and I thought the way they built up to his inevitable death was very well executed. Plus, he gets the best death in the entire film. In his dream sequence, he falls asleep while driving, and initially he's driving his truck when suddenly Freddy is in the truck with him and just doing his Freddy thing and fucking with him, stealing Dan's champagne for Alice, spitting it out, and it turns to acid, and he rips his own arms off and turns it into a stick shift on the car so he can drive it. Extremely camp, but it's a lot of fun, and it has some pretty gnarly effects. Those effects won't even prepare you for Dan's eventual death, though, because ooh, ew. He ends up on this motorbike after the truck crashes, and the bike literally starts to merge into his body as you see the gears, wires, and hoses cut into his skin and tear him apart until he kind of looks like Skeletor and is fused to the bike. It's extremely grisly, and they actually cut out parts of the effects in that scene in the final cut of the film because the MPA would not let that pass, but god damn, it is such an uncomfortable scene to watch, and if you can watch the uncut version, I highly recommend you do. Greta is next up on the list, and her scene is built around her mother's obsession with her figure and eating habits. Greta is essentially a beauty queen who faces a lot of flack from her mom for how she presents herself. So again, it's another nightmare character that has a very narrow stereotype for what they're going to fill, and it's essentially just a walking body bag for what their kill is going to inevitably be. A fun one, but that's really all Greta is in this film, just like the rest of the new characters I'm going to be talking about. I honestly may have enjoyed Greta's mother more than her, though, even with her very limited screen time. Mind you, her mother feels like she's from a completely different movie. Her outfits are so campy, and her deliveries feel like she took acting tips from Aunt Martha from Sleepaway Camp. If you know, you know.
Greta, that's not what a cover girl puts in her body.
You never can be too careful.
I feel like the director just let her do whatever she wanted, and I honestly lived for her really, really over-the-top performance. In Greta's death scene, though, she's at this big dinner party with her mother when it's discovered that Freddy is in fact catering this meal. He has Greta strapped down to her chair, and he starts to force feed her food from the table, even feeding her parts of herself, which again is another scene that got heavily cut down in the theatrical cut of the film. It's an extremely gross out scene, and the effects still make me uncomfortable to watch, and this eventually is what does her in. I love the sequence as Freddy's like stuffing her, but what I will say that I love less is her death in the real world. We see her choking, and I understand her flailing like this is because Freddy is holding her in the dream world, but it looks so goddamn stupid. Also, with her death, we get a porcelain doll that keeps popping up in her place in dreams, and I really hate the damn doll. It's such a stupid stand-in. So our third death, and last up of deaths on the list, is Mark, our artist and graphic novel enthusiast. Though I don't really care about his character really at all, because again, he just fits the very one-dimensional stereotype they want him to fill. He does have some really fun sequences in the film. They do some experimentation with animation in the film, and you have one part where he becomes this comic book sketch in front of the Elm Street house, which I thought was fun. And then later on, when he's sucked into his final dream, it feels like the twisted version of the Take On Me music video, with his whole body transforming into a sketch before he's pulled into the comic book he was holding. This leads into the final death sequence, as I was saying. In this scene, we see him in this black and white comic book world, but Freddy and him have this little fight sequence. I think it gets a little too campy when you have Mark essentially morph into this like superhero character. I think it's a little too over the top, and then when you have Super Freddy come into the mix, which is like really buffed out big Freddy Krueger, I'm not a big fan of it. What I am a fan of, and I think is really cool, is towards the end of this elaborate death sequence, all of a sudden, Mark becomes this like giant paper cutout of a comic book character, and Freddy slashes into the paper, and it starts to drain of all the color on the picture, and Freddy just continuously slashes into it until he's nothing but this like shredded pile of paper. It's an extremely campy kill, but it's an extremely creative one. It's not that gory because you can't really make paper gory, but it's a very memorable scene, and it is one that I do enjoy in the movie, so I will give praise where it's due. Fun factoid, too, about Super Freddy. The actor that played Super Freddy also played Dan briefly at the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the film, they show like a softcore porn scene of Dan and Alice messing around in her dream, and Dan's body has like all these close-ups to show him like all ripped and muscly and like, whew, daddy. And rather than having Dan's actor come back on set to film this scene, they just had the actor for Super Freddy step in. I thought it was kind of a fun fact when watching the documentary, because even Dan's actor made a comment about it and was saying how, hey, at least that guy made me look really damn good on camera. And I really thought that was Dan at the beginning of the movie, so I get what he's saying. Aside from our deaths, though, we have two other characters in this film that are very prevalent. We have both Alice and another one of her new friends, Yvonne. Since the beginning of the film, Alice is getting plagued by nightmares again, as she's beginning to realize that Freddy is coming back all over again. And then she realizes that Freddy is actually haunting the dreams of her unborn child, since apparently babies sleep and dream a lot when they are in the womb. I think it's a really fun idea. It's not executed the best here, unfortunately, because I feel like at a lot of times it just feels really choppy and really just shoehorned into the film. You have like a lot of really fun dream sequences in this movie, but a lot of them just kind of feel like very clunky. But I did get some enjoyment out of them, and I had a lot more fun with the sequences in this movie. There was a lot of really gnarly effects and a lot of good lore and backstory building for Freddy. You have the return of Amanda Krueger, Freddy Krueger's mother, who became a nun, which I didn't really delve into this in my Dream Warriors video like I should have. So just to give a quick breakdown, Freddy Krueger's mom was a nun, and she was assaulted by 100 maniacs, and that is how Freddy was born into this world. But they never actually found her body or what happened to her. And in Alice's dreams, she's seeing both Amanda and Freddy, and she realizes that she needs to find Amanda to be able to find the key to save herself, her friends, and her baby. Really bad job at saving her friends because her boyfriend and her other two friends are dead, but we'll digress on that for now. That's my favorite thing that a sequel can do, is when it does proper callbacks to a previous film. It makes it feel like it's actually a part of the franchise and a cohesive entry into this world they're building. And like, this isn't done well. I'm not saying that at all, because again, this is not that good of a Nightmare movie, you guys. It's just not the worst one I have seen, and I did enjoy it better than the previous one, and I thought they did a way better job of trying to showcase a lot of these new aspects of Freddy's backstory. But a lot of these dream sequences are really fun. You see a scene where Amanda is giving birth to Freddy, and she ends up having this demon spawn Freddy Krueger, which had some really cool effects. They actually even ended up reusing the Freddy baby dummy in the Freddy's Nightmares TV series. The baby isn't used for Freddy Krueger in the show, but it does make a reappearance other than just in this movie. But as each of Alice's friends are dying, they are being fed to her child, and Freddy is trying to use this as a way to be able to push himself into the real world. So it leads to some conversations where Alice needs to figure out whether or not she even wants to have this baby. And this is a part of the movie where I feel like if they would have just took more time in the writing room, I think it could have been done very well, because there is a conversation about abortion in this movie. But I think they could have delved into that way more here and see in this movie and more of a smart allegory in the film. But here it's really only brought up for shock factor. Even Robert Englund said it himself in the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary. He mentioned how he felt like it was more of a shock factor tactic in the movie. It wasn't anything to do with smart writing. It was literally just to like wow the viewers and shock them that they would even have that in this film. And I think it's a cheap trick, honestly, and I don't see the point of having it in this film, because the question does arise when Alice has a baby. That makes perfect sense to me. But the way you utilize it is for such a touchy subject and such a controversial subject. A subject that shouldn't be controversial, because if she wants the baby, have the baby. If she doesn't, don't have the baby. Like, it should be that simple. But for such a controversial subject at the end of the day, because it is, and not everyone shares my opinion with it, I know that they shouldn't just be throwing it in there as a cheap trick for their film. I think it's kind of nasty. Luckily, it isn't something that's all over this movie. It's really in only like one scene of dialogue where they're going back and forth with her and her friend Mark. But what I did enjoy in this movie, as Alice is very rapidly unraveling from all the stuff going on with Freddy, people are perceiving her as crazy, as they do in this franchise, and Dan's parents find out that she is not okay and that she is really struggling, and they think she's going insane, so they try to take the rights over the baby because it is their grandchild at the end of the day. I thought that was a really fun inclusion in the movie, and I would have liked if they would have pushed a little bit more into that and had some more scenes of that in the film, just to add a little more drama, because it would have been something new in the franchise. And I think it would have been a cool thing to like try to uncover in the films, and like a different trajectory for these movies than what they typically cover, rather than like the very teenage type interest stories that they typically cover in these movies. Her friend Yvonne, though, who I mentioned, I think Yvonne is a fairly decent character. I enjoyed her as Alice's friend in this film. I thought the actress did a suitable job at being able to go against Alice throughout the movie, as she's questioning whether or not any of this is even real, and thinking that Alice is just crazy before she is met by Freddy in one of her dreams. Her archetype that they go for her one defining character trait, other than her being a nurse, is her also being a swimmer. And in her dream, she climbs up this diving board to dive into the pool, and the diving board starts to morph into this giant Freddy Krueger claw hand, and they use stop motion animation for it. They actually use a lot of stop motion in this film. It dates the movie a little bit, but I think stop motion's fun. You don't really see it in movies nowadays anymore because there's not as much need for it. It morphs into this giant Freddy Krueger hand, and she ends up jumping off the diving board, and the pool warps into like this puddle that she ends up going through, which leads her to the boiler room. Alice inevitably saves her, and the two get together and they devise a plan on how to bring down Freddy Krueger once and for all. Alice goes into the dream world to confront Freddy, while Yvonne stays in the real world to try to track down Amanda Krueger's body, which this leads us to the very messy final act of the movie. And this is where my praise for the film is going to fall off of a fucking cliff. And I feel like it stops hiding the fact that it was so rushed into production, because my god, this final act is not a final act. It's just a shoehorned way to end the fucking movie, is really all it is. Initially, when you first get into it, it's kind of fun. You see Alice walking around in the dream world, and this is where some of the gothic tones come in, like I said, in the dreams. She's walking up and down these stairs, and she's trying to get to her baby Jacob, who she sees in the dream. And as she's walking up and down these stairs, there's stairs that are upside down, there's stairs that are sideways, and it's very much reminiscent of that old painting that you see referenced anywhere. I don't know what it's called at the top of my head, but I will post a picture of it in this video, so if you're watching, there's a visual so you know what I'm talking about. But as they're running around on these stairs and she's trying to catch up to her baby, we have Freddy, who shifts into Dan's form to try to convince the baby to come to him, and to convince Jacob that he is his dad, only for him to warp back into Freddy Krueger. I do think this sequence is a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed this. It's everything after this where it starts to get like very confusing, and I feel like the plot just was not plotting whatsoever, because Freddy Krueger entirely disappears, and Jacob and Alice are standing on top of this stained glass like floor, and they are looking around like, oh, where'd he go? And Jacob tells Alice that Freddy is actually inside of her, so then she starts to pull him out of herself, and initially the effects look really cool as like you see like Freddy unmerging from her body, but then it turns into this mess as like Freddy's like ripping out of her skin and like shredding her apart, but not, because Alice is perfectly fine. I don't really understand what they were going for here, and I don't even really think they fully understood what they were going for here. But when she finally pulls Freddy out of herself, in the real world we have Yvonne, who figured out where Amanda's body is, and she starts chiseling into this wall that's hiding the room that Amanda's skeleton is lying in. And once Yvonne gets into the room, it pulls a playbook straight from fucking Scooby-Doo, and she walks up to this nun skeleton and goes to touch it, and the skeleton has a little jump scare, and its head turns, and I shit you not, the skeleton whispers to her, "Thank you." And then it just disappears, and then Amanda shows up in the dream to help save the day and stop Freddy, and she lets Jacob know that he needs to let the evil out of him to let Freddy not control him. So all of a sudden, Jacob warps into like a mini Freddy Krueger. And mind you, I did not have a problem with Jacob's actor at all throughout the entire movie. This last scene though is god awful. You have him putting on this stupid wannabe Freddy Krueger voice, and I don't so much blame the child actor for this. I feel like this is more or less something to do with the director not properly directing the child. But after Jacob makes himself look like Freddy, he convinces Freddy that he wants to learn from him and that he wants him to show him his tricks, only for Jacob to trick Mr. Krueger and throw up on him, and it's his throw up that kills Freddy. And I know that they supposedly had some deeper meaning for it. It's fucking stupid, though. I feel like they're so full of shit when they're trying to tell you there's some deeper meaning to it, because this movie is so poorly written. It was so rushed to be written. You can't tell me that it didn't come across that way, that this little kid just pukes on Freddy and then all of a sudden he's dying. And then it leads to this like weird effect where the 3 people he killed in this movie are like shooting out of his back, and they are trying to fight to get away from him to be able to move on and no longer be in his clutches. And I like the effect in the previous film, and it's something I even praised in my last video when talking about the previous film, when you had the spirits literally pushing and tearing Freddy apart from the inside out, seeing their souls and their bodies pressing against his skin as they shredded him apart. I thought it was a really cool effect. It was really fun. This felt like a cheap knockoff in comparison to that kill, and I just was not a fan of it here. But eventually this kills Freddy, he turns to a baby, and Amanda ends up taking him back, and she is pregnant with him once again because Freddy's baby disappears into her body, and then she goes running away and locks herself in this room, and we end with like the final jump scare of like Freddy's hand ripping out of her stomach because she is pregnant with him after all now. But because she ran away with him, all these doors close and she locks him up, hinting at that he's locked up forever. Very obviously not, because we still have some more movies to talk about in this series. And the film actually ends with Alice hanging out at the park with her dad and Yvonne and baby Jacob, and it's a happy ending. I do enjoy that since we never see Alice again, there isn't like some cliffhanger ending for where Alice's story ends up. But after that god-awful ending also, I just really don't care. Like I said, it's all the praise I had for this movie, I feel like that ending kind of just, like, totally took a nosedive. But all in all, I do still prefer it over the Dream Master. Like I said, there's a lot of the same glaring problems with Dream Master I see in this film, but because Freddy seems a little less comedic to me in this entry, it doesn't bother me as much overall. But after this entry hit theaters, it ended up becoming the lowest grossing movie in the franchise at the time, and they course corrected and decided that they were going to release the next entry as the final one, Freddy's Dead. And unfortunately, I will be talking about that movie very soon. Very, very unfortunately. But anyways, you guys should let me know what you thought of A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Did you share similar opinions to me? Did you like it or hate it? Because, again, like, I don't think this is a good Nightmare movie, but all in all, it's not an awful movie, and it's not the worst movie in this franchise. Like, it was watchable. Like, that's the most praise I can say. It was watchable. If you want to continue following along with me as I cover the rest of the films in this franchise and anything else horror related, I would love if you click that subscribe button. I cover everything and anything horror on this channel. But with that all out of the way, this has been Justice, and I really hope to catch you guys on the next one. Take care.